my lords. Today we delve into Psionic Ascension and we'll discuss some of the changes that will come to the Shroud with the new Stellaris DLC, Shadows of the Shroud. We have a wonderful example empire to test this out with, and we're going to walk through the 7 Tian sovereignties' path to Ascension. And straight away we can see some really cool stuff. For example, they're using one of the new psionic portraits, which we've been told will also change as the species ascends, I assume becoming more glowy and more powerful looking. We can also see one of the new civics' superstitious beliefs, which we'll get onto right at the very end of the report. We have a new trait in uncanny intuition, which is classified specifically as a psionic species trait, and the new ship set is teased as well. I'm pretty sure this is the psionic ship set, and it looks really awesome, but perhaps in this image a little bit low resolution, but I assume that's just the image. Getting into Psionic Ascension. As normal, you'll need to select the Mind over Matter Ascension perk, and this won't be selectable until your third choice, unless you're a machine. Machines, whether Gestalt or individualistic, tend to have a slightly tougher time interacting with the Shroud, and so the Interdimensional Processing Ascension perk, which is the machine version of Mind over Matter, will require an extra Ascension perk, unless your empire has a chosen civic, meaning machines will need 4 Ascension perks rather than 3. Hard reset empires must be fully dehybridized, and Gestalt machine empires or Shroud forged empires must do something else. The powers that be seem not to be able to share that with us quite yet. Unlocking this Ascension perk will unlock the newly reworked Psionics tradition tree. And if you're quick on the button, you can see all the individual traditions that we go through. The first is Psi Corps. The Psi Corps are like an ever vigilant eye, and they peer into the minds of citizens, defending society from those who might do it harm. This is the first stage, and you will need to build one of these buildings to progress through the situation, but more on that shortly. The next is the Great Awakening, the eye that pierces all veils. Currently it's closed, and with only great effort can it be opened. This will unlock the next stage of the psionic tradition tree. Now we start to actually see some of the benefits of becoming psionic. Telekinesis is the first one. This will increase the situation speed, and once the situation has been completed, will increase habitability and happiness for psionic pops. Clairvoyance is the mirror to this. This will also increase the situation speed, but after Psionic Ascension will increase the sensor range, base level intel, code breaking, and encryption. The final tradition is psychometry. All things are charged with history. To hear it, our hands must learn from the language of matter. This will boost your telepaths, reducing crime, and it will give job efficiency for psionic specialists and increase galactic history specimen output by a whopping 25%. As with the other ascensions, taking the psionic tradition tree will begin the situation that tracks your progress through ascension and explores the societal ramifications of such a change. The start of this situation will unlock the latent psionic trait across all your people with a message that reads, "Since time immemorial, tales have flourished of Savanti wielding extraordinary powers, invading others' minds, lifting heavy objects with mere thought, or performing all manner of other supernatural feats. Now our scientists have obtained conclusive proof that certain Savanti are truly capable of such acts of the mind. As of yet, only a small minority of our species have manifested these psionic powers. This power seems key to achieving our fullest potential, and if these latent abilities can be unlocked, we can begin to master dimensions beyond ordinary comprehension." I am indeed a sucker for the flavor text, but that is good. So we've started to ascend, and a new feature is that we can now attempt to hasten our awakening through organized meditation. We sort of saw this in the Shadows of the Shroud trailer, and we can do this by consuming psionically active materials, aka Zro, the dust of dead Zeroni. But we can also unravel the threads tied to other planes of existence. Both of these will speed up the psionic situation, and it's teased that they will have other effects upon us, perhaps the end outcome, but as of right now, that remains unclear. Progress through the situation is partially gated by progress through the tradition tree, and the events that occur will influence the end results. So we won't be able to just fly through the situation without proper unity build up and selecting the various traditions as we go. We'll also have to build Psycorps and complete the Great Awakening at some point in the journey. We can see two different situation events teased here. While experimenting with new psionic techniques, we have observed unexpected materializations during group meditation. Narrowing our collective focus on a single point in space resulted in the fleeting appearance of strange and remarkable objects. The psychic toll involved is significant, but it is possible that we could direct these efforts into manifesting objects to fit our own purpose. Where these objects come from and what consequences may result are unknown. The actions that we choose from these events will have ramifications for the end of the psionic situation, so a similar design to bio and synthetic ascension. I'd guess that they potentially impact the advanced government type at the end, but we'll see. And it's also interesting to see the Zeroni are slightly teased here. These first steps towards enlightenment open up a new sub-tab for the Shroud in Contacts, although admittedly it's quite empty at the moment. Your position within the Shroud is slightly offset based on the nature of your empire, and the acts that have been had on the collective soul of said empire. So we can see that the empire is slightly off-center, pushing them to the north and west segments, and we assume that these segments are fixed places for the gods, as seen in previous development diaries. North is the instrument, west is the eater, the south is the composer, and east is the new one, Cradle of Souls. We learn that our actions on the material plane will have an impact on our attunement to the Shroud. As you can see, now we've moved over to the northeast segment, but we've also reached an appropriate psionic potential, and can now delve into the Shroud. After days of being locked in a hypnotic trance, we have finally managed to open a brief gateway into the Shroud. Now we can see this realm with greater clarity, resolving patterns from the swirling mass. Our actions influence its shifting flows of psionic energy, and formless entities gaze back on us from the other side, sometimes with curiosity, sometimes with kindness, and sometimes with malice. Our psionic mastery in the corporeal realm is only the beginning. Now that we have established an initial psionic link, we can combine our cognitive powers and delve into the Shroud. Piercing the veil and reaching into the Shroud is not a trivial matter. It can take years to recover from such an exercise. In mundane, mechanical terms, delving will start with a 5-year cooldown, but this can be modified in many ways, and there is no longer a material cost. Once you're in the Shroud, you can begin to explore it, and you will likely meet a presence or two. We spent years trying to pierce the veil, wearing it thinner and thinner under the pressure of our combined minds. On the other side, our efforts did not go unnoticed. Something watches us. Its presence radiates phenomenal power, a beckoning warmth in the depth of the Shroud. It barely notices us, watching us like we were the drop of condensation on a porthole. If only we could reach its inscrutable mind. Completing a communion reveals this entity to us in its full, terrifying glory. This, incidentally, is the new Shroud entity, the Cradle of Souls. The Cradle of Souls seeks order and harmony, but it appears that this empire don't want order and harmony. They want problems. So, they made the decision to reject the Cradle of Souls and seek their own path. This screen gives us so much insight into the new Shroud mechanics. We can see the Cradle of Souls, a window for our envoys to be assigned to it, which I assume will increase our bond with the entity. We can see 2 different accords and covenant powers that are gifted to us, and I'm assuming this means there is a level 1 and level 2, which, again, assumingly, when unlocked, the deeper you pact with the creature. We can also see a list of positive and negative deeds, a bit like factions. Clearly, the Cradle of Souls wishes for a more pacifistic, xenophile nature, and strongly dislikes empires who war, claim, and purge. The choice to spurn the Cradle of Souls shifted our position within the Shroud away from its domain, and we've discovered that some of the acts that will bring us more or less in accord with this entity, and a calling that we can fulfill in order to become closer with it. Attunement to a domain will grant us psionic accords, which are essentially passive effects for mastering that domain. Active covenant powers exist for those who are more eager to lash themselves to a serving patron. Rumour has it that a servant can never truly reach the pinnacle of their potential, and that such an easy way out is more limiting in some ways. The next entity we encounter was the Starving Being, a ravenous beast called the Eater of Worlds. The raw power of the creature clearly appealed to the Savanti. You'll notice that the deeds associated with the Eater of Worlds are diametrically opposite to those of the weak and pathetic Cradle of Souls. Each action that brings us in accord with one will likely reduce our accord with another. Over time, we see that the Savanti gained attunement to the Ravenous Patron, the Eater of Worlds, and during one of their delves into the Shroud, it makes an offer of great power in exchange for a small sacrifice. Accepting this pact would lock you into a covenant. It would unlock both covenant powers associated with the Eater of Worlds, but would chain the Savanti people in servitude and force them to carry an ongoing cost. But it is in exchange for power, remember. Nevertheless, the Savanti decided to reject this pact and will go on to forge their own path like the Zeroni did so long ago. This option shows us really the first glimpse of a patronless Shroud. You are psionic, but you're not pacted with a beast inside the Shroud. Interestingly, the Holy Guardians are also not pacted with a Shroud entity. Take that as you will. While this dev diary focused primarily on the events where we encountered the established powers and the major patrons of the Shroud, we are told that there are several minor patrons to interact with. Indeed, we've seen 8 of them in a previous dev diary. There were also rumours of greater powers out there. The tease of greater powers out there is almost certainly talking about the end of the cycle and the whispers in the void, who I've learned since the previous report isn't dead after all. It's actually been elevated beyond its previous power. I'm incredibly excited to learn about what that actually means. We are teased this patronless path ever so slightly with the following. Our link to the Shroud is strong. We are ready when it calls. The message comes in a rhythmic phrase. The Shroud sings to us. An image forms in our mind's eyes. We see the void. Chaos reigns where galaxies cluster. The void is a promise of calm. So, will you be the calm or the chaos? That's all we have regarding the Shroud. I feel like we did get an awful lot out of this. The patronless option is something that people have been calling for an awfully long time, and I'm really happy that they finally did it. The new Shroud mechanics look fantastic. It's really nice to see the system in a much more fluid state and actually impacted properly by your actions in real time. It's also really interesting to see a peaceful and calm god in the form of Cradle of Souls. I sincerely hope that there'll be some sort of narrative element to where it came from, and if we find more about why it's taken Whisper's spot and why Whispers has been elevated. I mean, the Whispers tease is fantastic. We know that the end of the cycle is going to be the big bad of the expansion, but what does that mean Whispers is going to do? Why is it now potentially a superpower within the Shroud? The very last thing they've teased this week is Superstitious Beliefs, one of the new civics, and all its subtypes: Zodiac Nexus, the Hive variant, Fortune Enterprise, the Megacorp variant, and Pattern Finders, the Machine variant. These are civics that cannot be added or removed after game start. Apparently, this society claims to have discovered a ritualistic mechanism to predict the future, leveraging exoteric pattern recognition and cyclic anomaly analysis. Proper ceremonies must be performed before every major decision to harmonise the unseen forces that shape their destiny. It appears that these civics will give our empires access to something called galactic dowsing. This seems to be a little bit of a copy of the Surveyor relic, which is an incredibly powerful relic that can add resource deposits on planetary bodies across your empire. This civic will also add the following. Every 13 years, the cycle will change. We're teased one of these cycles, and it seems like there's going to be a level of RNG that will gift or punish us, a little bit like the old Shroud mechanics perhaps. I'm a really big fan of these RNG style systems. I do enjoy the game having risk and reward scenarios where you are appropriately gifted, but also appropriately punished. I get that these systems are not always for everyone, nevertheless, I'm quite excited to explore this one. Normal programming will resume on Sunday, where I'm going to discuss ship sizes in Stellaris, and then I'll be back on Tuesday with more Shadows of the Shroud news.